Yo, what's up? My name is Severman and welcome back to another video on my channel. So in today's video, KRINC and I will show you how we made our latest track called Oracle. And I already did a video showing how I made the drop of the track, but in today's video we will show you how we made the break and the build-up and the other parts of the track. And we'll also go a bit more into detail with all the sounds. So I will give it up to KRINC, so let's go.
Yo, what's up guys, this is KRINC and I'm going to be explaining how we did the breakdown for Oracle. So this is actually the first version of the project, so the mixdown isn't quite there yet, but all the sounds are here, so yeah, let's get into it. First, I'm going to be showing you the respace, which sounds like this. So this is a Spur preset, and for the processing I did a little trick that I like to use, which is adding a bit crusher to the respace. So here are my settings, and basically I do this to make it sound a bit different and to add some kind of texture to the high end. So this is how it sounds like without the bit crusher, and with it, yeah, as you can hear, it adds something to the high end, which sounds pretty cool and a bit different. Next up is Camel Crusher. You're gonna see this plugin pop up a lot, mainly because I sort of misused it. This project is from January, so yeah, but yeah, I basically used this plugin to make the respace sound a bit more powerful and to gain a bit of volume. So this is how it sounds like without, and now with. Big difference, right? Okay, so next up is the choir. So this is a preset from Nexus. It's from the vocoder expansion, and yeah, I'm using Fruity Low filter. I'm just automating the cutoff, and I have an EQ which is removing the low frequency so it doesn't clash with the respace. I highly recommend you do this once you have a sound, maybe it's a kick, maybe it's like a sub bass, whatever, that is filling up the low frequencies pretty well. I recommend you lock out the sounds that come after so they don't fight for space, because if I didn't do this, the frequencies would add up and it would sound really bad. So I'll make sure you do this. And I also have a boost in the high end to make it a bit brighter and more present. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the intro. We also have this impact. And yeah, now we move on to the Spur. We have some sweeps. And we also have a cinematic drum. I didn't do anything to it, and of course we have this plug that comes in. Okay, so as you can see, there's a cutoff automation and there are some spikes here. So here on the longer notes, I decided to open the cutoff pretty much all the way, so it creates like a cool little effect. I was just playing around with the cutoff and I came up with this. And I think the result sounded pretty cool and dynamic. So yeah, so for the plug itself, it's also from Spur. And for the processing, I'm gonna have a Camel Crusher. I probably should have disabled the distortion here. As you can see, it sounds a bit cleaner, but whatever, it worked for the final result. Then we have an Ars Acoustic Reverb for the Delay 3, and this neat little plugin called Fresh Air. So this plugin is actually free, and it's really good to add some high end to your sound. So I'm going to show you the before and after, and you're going to see that this plugin really adds a lot of presence to your sound. So this is how it sounds without. As you can see, it adds some high end to the sound, and it just makes your sounds come to life. I actually have used this plugin on those vocal chops that come a bit later. I'm gonna show you, and you're gonna see that there's a huge difference there. Then we have an EQ, which is not actually being used, and we have a phaser, which is used in the second break, but me and Severman ended up not using it for the final version. Then come the kick and claps. This is how they sound like, and this is the kick, and these are the claps. We also have these strings that come in, which is Hybrid Strings 3 from Nexus. I just have a Hollish Vintage Verb, and an EQ, which is cutting the low frequencies, boosting a bit of the mids and the highs. And you might have noticed that there's one kickstart automation right here, and it's triggered when the kick and the claps come. So because I was a bit lazy, not gonna lie, what I did was I linked everything that plays here together with the kick and the claps to one single channel where I have a kickstart. There's other methods you can do to have, for example, sidechain without having to create an automation clip for every single channel, but I didn't really know that at the time, so I just ended up doing this way. So here we have some sweeps for the transition, and now comes the climax. So as you can hear, it doesn't sound too much like the final version. This is just a quick sketch we made, and yeah, I'm gonna show you the leads. So they individually sound like this. For the leads, I just have a low cut, a little boost in the mids and the highs. Then we have another EQ, which is boosting this area, dipping a bit on the high mids and boosting the highs a little bit. Then we have the standard low cut and high cut on your leads. We have a Fruity Stereo enhancer, which is not being used. Fruity Peak controller, Fruity Reverb. I'm sure most of you guys know how to do the sidechain reverb trick. Severman also explained it on the video where he went through the drop. Then we have a Camel Crusher, British clean. This time with the distortion off, because if we turn this on, it sounds way too distorted, so we just left it off. Fruity Low Filter, which is used in the Buildup, and Fruity Balance, which is not actually doing anything. Then we have this chord. So we just have a standard acoustic reverb. Highly recommend you guys get this plugin. It's absolutely amazing. If you're looking to have those really big reverbs, this plugin is absolutely perfect in my opinion. Then we have Fruity Peak controller as always, and a little dip around 120 Hz, and a Fruity Delay 3 with the ping pong preset. We also have this ARP playing. This is more present in the part before the build-up, but yeah. Anyway, so for the processing, again, low cut and a filter, which is used a bit later. And yeah, that's it. Now we're gonna move on to the part before the build-up. I apologize for the lag, by the way. It's just my PC doesn't really like when I'm recording, so yeah. So for this part we have the respace playing. We have a new sound coming in, which is this distorted lead. different EQ to bring some annoying frequencies. It's this one and this one. It just makes it sound less annoying, I guess. Then we have an extra pad coming in. It's actually the arm I meant this one, which is also from Spur. As you might have guessed, Spur is my favorite VST. And yeah, we just have an EQ. I'm not sure why this is here. It should be like this. Low cut and a bit of high cut, so it's not too present. This is the choir, which is with a cutoff. And now we come to the vocal chops, which is actually a cashmere loop, which we stretched from 19 BPM to 130, and we pitched it from G minor to D sharp minor, or E flat. This okay, so we have an EQ, which, you know, standard low cut, dip here around the mids, so it was not super messy with the pads and everything. Then we have fresh air, and here it really does make a huge difference, because listen to how it sounds like without fresh air, and then we're gonna compare it with. So as you can hear, it's very dull. If I played it all together, it wouldn't sound as present, but now with fresh air, it just brings the sound to life. So yeah, that's a really good plugin for you guys to get. It's also free. So yeah. Then there's these claps that come in. There's cashmere transition. And swings again. And just some crashes and sweeps. Now I'm quickly going to show the old sketch for the second break. It's just the original part, and then so here the phaser effect, we actually ended up using it on the chords, and the vocal wasn't implemented here yet. But yeah, then of course we have a key change. Which we just went one octave, one semitone up, so we went from D sharp to E. It just gives a lot more energy, and it also helps keeping it fresh, you know, because it's an unexpected change, so it kind of catches you off guard, but in a good way. So I think it's a pretty cool transition, and it's also not very widely used, so it's sort of unique. So yeah, that's it for me. Now I'm going to pass it on to Severman so he can explain the rest of the project.
Alright, cool. So thanks KRINC for showing your FLP and all of the sounds which you have just shown. So let's actually head over to the final FLP, which I've also already shown you in the previous video where I showed you the drop. But yeah, let me actually start with kind of the break again. And one thing that I changed with KRINC's stems, which he then sent to me, was the bass line. Like, I didn't change it completely, but what I did is I pitched it up by 1 octave, and I think that's worth mentioning because it's doing quite a noticeable difference in the mix. I mean, otherwise it would not have done it. But yeah, before the bass line sounded like that. And then in the final track, the bass line sounds like that. I just thought before it sounded a bit too low and like slightly too muddy muffled kind of, and pitching it up an octave just made it a bit like clearer in the mix. All right, then let's talk about the plugs again. So with the plugs, I did some more processing on them because I felt like they were sounding quite, like they had really sharp transients. And also if you take a look at the audio waveform of the plugs, you can see that all of the transients, or like that it has very pronounced transients, as you can see. So all of these peaks right here that you can see are all caused by the notes that are playing. So basically what I wanted to do was I wanted to get rid of these sharp transients, make them a bit like softer. And I did that using the Fruity limiter. And then here I basically just set up a brick wall limiter because I turned down the attack, release, and sustain all the way. And then what I did with the ceiling, I just lowered that one until I felt like, okay, now it's sounding a little better, you know, like not too sharp with the transients. And I have it set now to -7 decibels. And also if we check the analyzer, or whatever you want to call this right here, can really see how it's sort of pushing down these transients. And then next up I added this sound quantizer. So with this one I just wanted to compress the plugs a little more to just get them like on one even volume, you know. And then I added this balance to just turn back the volume, because with the sound quantizer I was also adding a bit of volume, but I just wanted to get it on one equal volume like throughout the track. And then with the EQ which I added next up, I just boosted the 1.2 kHz, or actually like I reduced the frequencies below and above that. So I thought just this helps to make the plugs sit a little nicer in the mix with the other sounds. And then we have another filter for automation, as well as this endless smile and the kickstart for when the clap and the kick hits in the break. And then I also added like this girl voice type of sound, which I also have in the drop, which I already showed in the previous video as well. So this one sounds like that. So just sitting in the background, just adding a bit of ambience to the break. Then we have some more, no, these are actually muted, okay, but then we have some more effect sounds. That's what I wanted to actually say. So these right here, so this is like a Kashmir impact. And then I also added this reversed lead thing to kind of help introduce the leads at this hands up part, or whatever you want to call it. So without this reverse sound, it would sound like that. And again, with it on, it sounds like that. It's not a huge difference, but it definitely helps to make the transition a bit smoother and nicer. So this is a nice trick to generally make your transitions better by bouncing out a sound that you have, that you're going to, or like that you're going to have in the next 8 bars or whatever. And you can, really introduce that one by bouncing out the first note of your melody and then reversing it and then putting it in front of those 8 bars. So that's generally a good tip for improving the transitions. So speaking of transitions, then in the actual transitions from the breakdown to the drop, it was kind of hard to get that build up right, or that transition, because in the break we have this Reese bass, which KRINC showed you, and then in the drop I have this gated bass line, which sounds like that in the drop. And at the beginning I was having a bit of trouble to get that transition right from the break into that drop because of those two different bass lines. And how I eventually ended up doing is I basically introduced that new bassline using a low pass filter and volume automation. So if we take a look at these two automations right here, that first one is for the low pass filter automation. So you can tell at this point it only has some lows, like no mids really and no highs. And the closer we come to the drop, the more the filter is opening up. And then with the volume automation, I have it completely down at the beginning of the build up. And then I'm, like introducing the sound also by boosting the volume slowly. So the volume is going up, as you can see. And then, it's pretty much all the way up, or it's actually all the way up in the, like half of the build up. But then I'm reducing the volume again as the track comes closer to the drop, because I wanted to take out that energy of the bass line right before the drop to then have it like again 100% in at the drop again. So then with the break bass, I also created an automation clip for the volume. So it's this one I'm talking about. And as you can see, I'm basically fading out that break bass line. And then in the, when we go over into the second half of the build up, it's basically, it has faded out completely at that point. And then we're only having the drop bass line in there. So let me play the basses solely in the build up so that you get an idea of how they're like transitioning. So as you can tell, the transition is actually fairly simple, but getting to that point was quite tough for me, because you have both bass lines playing at the same time, and not having them clash with each other was kind of hard, but it ended up being quite simple. So let's take a look at the other sounds that I have in the build up. So I have this snare right here. It's like, this one's called LSE snare 1. So with this one, I'm also introducing it using a low pass filter, and I also have a pitch automation to pitch it up before the drop. Then again, we have that girl voice sound, some crashes. Then we have some uplifters. Then I added this bass riser. So this one is just a sine wave, as you can see. Then I also looped up the choir, which KRINC had in the break. I'm also like fading it out with the volume automation, and then another like white noise sweep. Some more drums. Oh no, actually these are muted, so I didn't end up using these. So also muted, muted, muted. Actually a lot of stuff in there which is muted, but this is also like part of the process. Trying out sounds, see if they kind of suit the track, if they make sense in the mix. It's also a bit of trial and error sometimes, but I didn't end up using all of these sounds, but then I did end up using that other snare that I already showed you. So do we have anything else in the build up? Not really. It's only the leads that are being introduced again. So obviously we already had them in the break here, but then again we're like fading them in the build up. And for that I also did some like automation with the filters and stuff, like high pass filter, low pass filter, also a bit of volume automation to reduce the volume right before the drop. And that's pretty much it with the build up. So then like before the drop we have this fill type of thing. So for this I use that impact sound which I had in the break, and then I also have this snare fill which I have from another track of mine. So then we're basically at the drop, and if you haven't checked out the other video yet, make sure to check that out, because I explained the drop in that video, so I'm not really gonna talk about anything from the drop, because we've covered pretty much anything that's like part of the drop. So let's jump over to the second break real quick. So the second break is quite different to KRINC's initial idea for the second break. So my idea was to use the vocal chops again in the second break, and not in like the build up again as we have in the first build up. But I felt like using them already in the second break, like right after the drop, kind of helped to keep the track fresh, because you know in the first break you didn't have these vocals. And yeah, I felt it just really worked with the vibe, in my opinion. And then I also added another pattern of chords which sound like that. So this is actually the same chord that I also use in the drop. So I also already showed that one in the other video. So I think I just did some like different processing on this break chord thing, synth, whatever. So on here I have this EQing, like rolling off the lows a bit, and then I added this fruity flanges, however you pronounce it. So just to add like some flanger effect, and then we have the P controller and the reverb. Yeah, so that's pretty much it with the processing for that one. And then I added this stadium clap right here. It's like a from the Revealed Recordings NEMS clap. Yeah, but that's then pretty much it already with like the second break. Like I didn't really add anything else to it except like this sound, which I also already showed before. Yeah, I also added the cinematic drums. Not sure if KRINC already had them in at this point. And then we're basically doing this key change thing in the track, also which KRINC already, yeah, talked about. So also I think it's creating something really unique in the track, and it's not really something it's done in a lot of other tracks yet. Like you have that in some euphoric hardstyle tracks, and yeah, we just decided to also do this in this track to just keep the track interesting, because you know with this track we didn't have any vocal. So if you don't have any vocal in the track, you really need to keep your instrumental interesting. So yeah, that's pretty much it then with the break and the drops and the build up. So let me show you also the intro and the outro real quick. So yeah, when it comes to making intros and outros for EDM tracks, how I usually do it is I just copy my drop and then I paste it to the right position in the track where I want to have my intro or outro. And then I basically just mute some of the sounds, because obviously that, like, if I wouldn't mute any sounds, it would be just the drop. But yeah, for instance, in the intro or outro, you don't want to have too many musical elements in there, like too many melodic sounds. That's what I'm talking about. So for instance, I wouldn't recommend keeping the melody in the intro. Like you can maybe try to introduce the melody a bit, like using automation and stuff, but I wouldn't really recommend adding too many melodic sounds in the intro, because if you like DJing and you're mixing this track with another one, usually gets too much. So for example, in the first half, we have all of the drums from the drop. So, you know, the effect sounds, you can see the kick drum, the white noise sounds and stuff, the kicks and claps. But we don't have, obviously, the leads in there. We don't have the chords in there yet. We only have the distorted lead from KRINC. So I looped this one up. And this one just helps to fill out the mids in the intro. And also what's like important when you're, you know, creating your intro is to do automation, because with automation you can really, yeah, fade in sounds or fade out sounds, create some movement in your track. Yeah, and on this sound I basically just used a low pass filter to introduce it in the intro. So yeah, without this one, the intro would sound quite empty and boring, because we don't then have really anything in the mid range, because we only have those drums from the drop. But yeah, this one really helps to fill out those mids a bit. And then in the second half of the drop, I introduce the chords and the bass line. Yeah, and also on these I have a low pass filter to not have them like too upfront in the intro. So at the beginning of the intro, like the first half of the intro, the first 8 bars, just keep it fairly simple. Don't have too many melodic sounds in there. And then in the second half, you can add your bass line or your chords using a low pass filter or volume automation or whatever to like fade them in and fade them out, maybe when you're going to the break then at the end of the intro. At the outro, it's basically the same process but sort of reverse. So obviously in the outro we are fading out our track, so we're also fading out the elements using low pass filter. That's how I do it in the outro as well. So let's check out the outro. So again, nothing special, it's just the drum sounds from the drop, as well as that distorted lead sound, which we have from KRINC. So but that's pretty much it with our track Oracle. So make sure to go stream the track using the first link in the description. And also, I hope you liked this video with KRINC. Make sure to leave a